noticed that animation has been popping up everywhere? In education, advertising, health, and so many other professional fields. Well, the global animation industry is expected to grow by 11% between 2020 and 2025 and has become a growing area of employment internationally. To emphasize the importance of using animation as a tool for teaching other industries, especially here in Jamaica, are Claire Grant, TVJ, Michael Luktong, Flow, and TASHARA Lee Johnson, advertising agency, The Lab. The panel will be moderated by Doyen Williams, animation industry consultant at the World Bank. The live chat feature is available, and you can ask the panelists all your questions. So let me now hand over to Doyen.
Thanks, Debbie, and welcome everyone to the Animating Your Everyday Reality panel. With us, we have Michael Luktong, TASHARA, and Miss Claire Grant from TVJ. So we have represented here, we have cable provider and telecommunications operator, an advertising agency, and the national broadcasting network or provider. So as we move into this panel, I'm not going to try to introduce these wonderful people. I'm actually going to hand over to each of them, and I'm going to ask them to provide us with just a quick rundown of who they are, what their company does, and how they affect the animation industry.
Thank you, Doyen. I am Michael Luktong. Currently, I'm the Director of Entertainment Networks at Flow. I've been in telecommunications probably too long, 14 years or so, and cable television. A couple firsts that I'm proud of. I mean, we are involved in the first HD channels, that were, broadcast on cable, video on demand platform. We first to do that. A lot of great stuff that we did on the analytics front in Jamaica. So spent a lot of time in telecom, spent a lot of time in cable television, and we do. There's animation plays several roles in our business, which I'm sure we'll get into in our discussions. I could just go through a little quickly about Flow and how we operate. Flow is part of Cable and Wireless, primarily operating in probably every English-speaking country in the Caribbean. We're part of a larger group of companies called Liberty Latin America, which includes some significant businesses in Costa Rica, as well as Chile and in Puerto Rico. Just to bring it back home, we're the largest distributor of cable television in the Caribbean. We have networks in probably 22 markets in the Caribbean and direct operations in 15. We provide, give or take about 250 channels. It varies by market. We operate 11 channels ourselves. And then we have a budding, growing digital platform, our Flow Sports app, as well as a Flow to Go platform. We are also the largest buyers of cable content in the region, and we are the major customers of Disney, as well as Turner, Viacom, and Discovery. Animation is a significant element to several services that we provide in entertainment, as well as in our customer experience. And we are committed to providing the best animation that's available globally, so everybody gets exposed to it, and we think that could unlock a lot of potential here in Jamaica for the development of animation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And right after you, I'm going to ask TASHARA, and then we'll close out with Ms. Grant from TVJ.
Thank you, Doyen. I'm TASHARA Lee Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at The Lab. The Lab, also known, the real name is the Limnas and Bards Limited, but a lot of persons know us as The Lab, is a advertising agency and digital agency. We also are a production house here in Jamaica. We have over 13 plus years of experience We have 3 distinct units at the lab. We have our agency, we have our production unit, and we also have our media innovation unit. So under agency, we have our creatives, copywriters, designers, and client management team. Under the media innovation, we have our traditional media, which is the TV, the radio, the print. We have digital media. We also have brand insight, consumer research and insight. And then under production, which is what persons might know us most for, is our film production unit and then post-production unit. Under the post-production unit is where you have like the radios, the live production, and animation and motion graphics. For us, animation is a key part of translating a lot of our stories into a format that is translatable, understandable, and relatable to a few persons outside of just doing footage and live streams. It is something that we always bring to the fore in terms of ideas and how we can pitch it in another way. I think COVID, for example, has given light to a lot of that because there are so many restrictions now in terms of hours and filming. And so we find that animation is definitely growing and it's something that's going to be a part of a lot of what is curated moving from here on.
Thank you, Tashara. And let's close out with the lovely Miss Grant.
Thank you, Dan. I'm the general manager for Radio and Television Jamaica, the RGR Gleaner Communications Group. The merger between the RGR Communications Group and the Gleaner Company took place within the last 6 years, so that is fairly recent in a lot of people's memories. My responsibility in terms of radio and TV, and specifically TV, is where the animation interest is there. TVJ is Jamaica's #1 brand. And we like to think that in terms of the region, we certainly are far ahead of most of the other territories in terms of the nature of local content and actual production work that we do. So within the TV entities that exist within the group, however, TVJ is the lead brand. It is the big brand. We also have cable stations in the form of Television Jamaica Sports Network, RETV, which is Reggae Entertainment, as well as Jamaica News Network. We then have recently launched TVJ International, which is a brand that currently broadcasts out of Cayman, and we're busily trying to roll it out across the region, across the world. And most significant, I think, in 2014, we launched our OTT platform, which was way ahead of certainly the other players in the region who were not, I don't think we're quite paying attention to that space, but for us, we did recognize that the OTT platforms was the next leap in terms of how media was going to transmit. So we created a One Spot Media Tracks platform. It has on all our brands. It also has on Carib Vision and all of the radio brands. It's an exciting platform. It does pay-per-view, it does rentals, and it's an interesting component of what we do and how we see the future. As far as animation is concerned, though, for television and as a station that is invested in local content, graphics is central to what I call the sexiness of the brand. So for the people who are watching television every day, they don't tend to appreciate that this is animated work. But when you watch Smile every morning and you see the cup coming up and it's spinning and the steam is coming out, and all of that is work that comes from people who have that skill set. So a lot of times people think of animation and they all think that, well, you're going to have to be working on Frozen and that's what it's about, or it's cartoons. No, there's a lot more to that particular skill set. It's actually quite rare. And people who understand the depths of what they are supposed to do or what can be a career they're not many. Last night as in the 8th of April, we had the final of School Challenge Quiz. And there was an insert there at the beginning as to how the kids were presented. That's all animation. They got pretty creative and did something with a drone showing the kids come up. And then we have invested fairly recently, like the last 4 or 5 years, in software that allows us to do augmented reality or virtual reality. And that has also allowed us to roll out a lot of things because as we're doing more programming, we can't build out all sets. You're not going to be able to do that. Yes, you're going to want to have some real sets, but what virtual reality and augmented reality is going to allow us to do is to utilize the technology to create sets and save us money, but also provide another experience. So for us, it's a really important area. We are interested in actually doing full productions and our own cartoon work for local content, as we have done with other things, but it's a big deal for us.
Thank you for that, Ms. Grant. And actually, I want to come right back to you because you raised a lot of what I think are really, really powerful points with regards to just how the animation industry works and how we can see ourselves growing together and how TVJ can support that. So I wanted to begin my questions to kind of tease out a little bit more about the virtualization of your sets, and the kind of skill sets that you might be looking for. If you could tell us a little bit more about how that works. Are we looking at people who are going to the universities right now to learn a little bit more about 2D animation? Are we looking at people that are going to universities to learn about 3D animation? And how does that come together within your own workspace right now?
I mean, it is that and more. I think one of the things that people need to understand is that the creative process involves a range of things, right? So for example, for the finals for quiz, the creative department, the graphics department, they're challenged every year to, well, what am I going to come up to do that's going to be different? So the very first time they did that kind of production, it was very TV-esque. You know, they went out and they did a shoot, and they kind of just had basic television type graphics that they were using. But what you saw last night is certainly moving it to another level.
Right.
We're really beginning to use now the graphic animation skill sets in a creative way.
Mm-hmm.
I say that to say, yeah, the training is one thing, but it's a lot more about having a clearer understanding of how TV, the medium, works. Because the idea as to what you're going to do has to start, first of all, from saying, okay, what is it that will make this idea sexy? They kind of thought about it and said, well, it's a pandemic, and we want to figure out how we're going to show the kids without them touching and kind of make a point about the pandemic. So just the ideas creatively are even more important than just understanding how you're going to do the things that animators do. And that becomes very important, because when people are only locked into the hard skill set of the images and how you create them and how you sketch them and all of that, then it becomes difficult for them to kind of transition into a full-blown department and be really contributing to what you want to get coming out at the end.
Great. And so what I hear coming from you, and excuse me if I don't get the TV terms right, but what I hear coming out from you is there is an element that is beyond the hard skill, where if we're talking about training, we should also be looking at production and direction of animation, not just the creation and technicalities of the animation skill. Great.
So if I am thinking visionary, I see TVJ animation. I see the logo. I know what it looks like. It's something that I certainly see us having down the road.
Right.
However, when I think about TV animation, and a lot of people think it's just about hiring animators,
right?
Somebody's going to have to write the script, right? Somebody is going to have to think through what the characters are and their components of how that is going to happen. Somebody is going to write a script, but yes, you have to make the script translatable for the medium.
Right.
Just like any other platform, yeah, you're going to tell a story, but how do you write a script that translates into television? Mm-hmm. How do you write a script that translates into television through animation? That's a specific skill set. And that's something that you really have to understand and appreciate. So if I'm thinking of rolling out an animation department, there are so many components to it that are not just about, well, I went to university and I understand how to use a computer and to animate, right?
Understood.
I think that is one of the areas that over the years, when we've been having Kingston and there are different groups that come together, everybody is not really seized in understanding that there's so many components to this thing, and you have to appreciate them. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to do something and you don't do it fully and you don't understand why. And it's because there's some components of what is required that you didn't really think through or didn't think you needed to be expert in.
Great. I think that's a great insight, especially for this kind of a panel. I do have another question for you that does go to that kind of script writing and storytelling idea. One of the things that I've found myself in working with animation over the years in Jamaica is that everybody is, as you said earlier, locked into this idea that they need to work on a Frozen or they need to work on the next huge series or so on. And so you find a lot of people that get stuck because they don't have the money to work on Frozen. They don't have the nicks to work on Frozen. They don't have the hardware to work on Frozen. But they do have the skill and equipment to work on a short 2-minute piece, what we would probably term an interstitial. Again, please feel free to correct me if I'm getting the TV terms wrong, right? But what we'd consider an interstitial. So one of the things that I can foresee is us pushing this idea of getting people into the culture of working in the TV space by working with interstitials. Right. What's TVJ's appetite for something like that?
Well, I mean, we're a business, right? I know that we are the nation station. So a lot of people think of us as the nation station. That's not a business, but we're a business, right? So obviously we have to do anything that we're doing. We have to think through how it works. It doesn't mean that every single thing that we do is going to make a profit, because there's a point at which we have to put the skin in the game and we have to invest to build something, but you're not going to, throw yourself under the bus. I certainly think that as we've been playing around in that space or trying to play around in that space for some time, the model that we have, and this is TVJ as a child of JBC, that has evolved over the years, right? From the beginning when it started, and understanding that we stand on a pillar of local content, and that's what defines us and that's what differentiates us. And you make an attempt to venture into the production of local content in the way that you're able to do it, and you grow.
All right.
So I think one of the most exciting products that we did in recent times would have been Ring Game Season 2. And you look at the production values on that in comparison to Ring Game Season 1, and it's chalk and cheese. But Ring Game Season 1 was important to get into Ring Game Season 2.
Right.
And Ring Game Season 3, we expect that it is again going to be moving. I sit and I watch on a Sunday night on TVJ, Greenleaf and Queen Sugar. I see no reason, based on where we ended Season 2, that type of production is possible. Now, we did Season 1, and at that time, somebody's going to say, oh, well, it doesn't look all that. Why didn't you do Queen Sugar and that sort of production? You have to take the steps. And animation is pretty much the same. I believe we have to take the steps.
Right.
We have to look at something that is manageable from a cost, manageable from the resources that we have. And it's not that you want to put out bad work, and this is important. It's not that you're planning to put out substandard work, but you kind of have to be reasonable to say, okay, what can I do and how far can I get? Do it. Don't not do it, but let's do it. So if we do it and you get something, I would like to work on it internally and engage people to come. I'd like to engage students to come, try to do something and get a little feel. Once something is out there, it stimulates a whole lot of stuff. I don't mind being out there, for example, and people say, oh boy, TVJ only do that. I can do something better. Come, do something better. That's fine. Come, do something. Even if it do something better and Michael gets it, it doesn't matter. It begins to start a process of growing this industry in a tangible way, outside of what I think we've been doing a lot of, which is, talk.
And you know what? I'm going to take that segue that you gave me about Michael, and I'm going to jump straight to him, actually. Thank you so much, Ms. Grant, for your responses. They're very insightful. Michael, you've been put on the spot.
First time.
So, I mean, one of the things that Ms. Grant brought out to us is about this idea of steps and the entire thing of animation being a business, and how you work that out. And I know what Flow brings to the table is this kind of a wide-reaching network of businesses and arms and connectivities and so on. One of the bigger things that I've heard animators come to me and complain about, especially the same 3D animators that we were mentioning earlier, was at the end of the day, equipment is expensive, right? And so things that they want to do, they can't do because they can't get the equipment, right? And then this terminology of a render farm comes up. I'm not super technical, but the idea is I am able to kind of pass on the load of this particular process to a cloud computing situation. My estimation is that probably Flow, given its outlay, would have a lot of cloud computing power. Has Flow ever thought of maybe repurposing or direct purposing some of its power, some of its processing power, and some of its networking to this idea of a render farm in an attempt to help to buffet some of the demand from the animation industry?
Well, absolutely. I think the key that you hit on there is the network, right? We are, the largest provider of subsea capacity, hands down, in the Caribbean. And that network has, a lot of capacity on it. Basically, what you're talking about is the ability for animators, to be in a cloud environment, and to be able to tap into some kind of centralized facility where they're putting their work up, and then it comes to somebody, and somebody is doing some more processing of the content. We are actually looking at a solution similar to that. It's not animation, but it's a similar concept in the Eastern Caribbean right now to be able to produce high level sports. But the concept is the same. You have all these contributors. One could be in Jamaica, one could be in India or whatever, and they are tapping into some kind of centralized facility. Now we have the network in place that does that, the subsea network. And as I said, the capacity on that, we are nowhere near the capacity to use that. So the infrastructure is there, the backbone to do it, is already in place. As I said, we've on the media front, we actually already working on a solution for live video. But animation is no different. The rendering farm is no different. You need gigabit capacity, to tap into a centralized facility. We have that on our network that's in place. So that is possible. To get something like that going, actually, it's not impossible. I think all that's really needed is the environment to do it. The actual applications and stuff like that, but the network connectivity is there. We have it in place. We're already carrying 70% of the internet traffic in the Caribbean, and it's not even scraping the surface of our network.
Right.
The capacity is there, and for animation, as you rightly said, this is gigabit, file transfer and stuff that you need, that needs to be instantaneous. But the network is in place.
It sounds, Michael, like what you're saying to me is what you want is somebody to carry a business proposal to, So I'm guessing this is now a call to the more technical people who are looking for this kind of a thing to say, put something together and let's talk, because we have the capacity to kind of knock it down.
The capacity space, as I said, we're already working on something hopefully will come to fruition in the next couple of months, and that project is basically the same. It's all production,
pulling everything together
at high quality, and I would say zero latency, but minimal latency. So it's our rendering farm for animation is no different. The core is a network that has the capacity, and that is largely in place already.
Great. All right. No, I wanted to ask you another question that kind of slightly takes us away from the technical. In preparing for this kind of a panel, I reached out to a lot of the people in the animation network, and I said, what are some of the questions that you have? Maybe there are opportunities you're seeing that these service providers aren't seeing. What do you want me to bring forward for you? And one of the things that came out of that was this idea of, again, going back to Flow's reach across the Caribbean, and unfortunately, Flow's not so rosy reputation around customer service. And so what they were saying was, maybe what you could begin looking at with Flow is if there was a possibility for, because each of your modems come with a kind of a home page, right? Is there any kind of a thought around probably slapping and some motion graphics as to how you can do self-service on your modems, or maybe even creating a space for having local content that is easily viewed, because the modem is there and it's in everybody's house and people go to the homepage at that point in time. What's your consideration of that? Is that something that could even be considered?
Well, it's actually some stuff that's in place. I think what you're really talking about is people's let's call it digital experience, and we are absolutely focused on digital in our customer experience. I mean, COVID has forced us to be erecting e-stores, which customers can go to, and obviously, we are sold that animation is very, very compelling, in the digital space. So you'll hear us talk about our digital experience, from our CEO come down. We are preaching that. And we want our experiences to be, as engaging as possible. I mean, and when you're doing things digitally, animation just lends itself.
Indeed, it does.
To a digital experience. If you look at a couple of the apps that we've launched, there are some animation elements to it, and we can only build on that. So absolutely, we are focused on a digital customer experience, and we are sold that animation enhances that entire experience.
Great, thank you, Michael. I kind of want to use what you said to springboard over to our advertising agency, because a lot of the times they're the ones that have some kind of input into that creative piece that is the end result. So Tashara, I'll call you to the fore now, and I want to know, because I mean the lab has this history and culture and reputation ever since I've been engaged with the lab of getting it done. That's a big deal. You guys get it done, and you get it done right the first time, kind of a thing, right? And so I want to know a little bit about how that works. But in my mind, I can also see that animation is a time-consuming piece of work, whether or not you're doing it in post-production or if you're just doing it and that is a production. So I was thinking around what really could an advertising agency benefit from investing into deeply in animation that nobody has thought about, or that I don't see out and about as yet. And I thought about it and I said, well, why don't we have a Jamaican animation asset at that library? And what would stop someone like the lab from spearheading this kind of a project? What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, nothing will stop us from That's a brilliant idea, and we are open to ideas all the time. I think it's really brilliant. As you said, we bring a lot of the stories to life. And as Claire mentioned earlier, animation is all encompassing. It is the graphics that you see, it's the supers, as we call it, the names. Probably people watching this sees my name come up, and that is a part of animation. It's something that is not just the big picture, but it's small. I think an asset library is key, because, for example, at the lab, we tend to use a lot of the stock imagery sites, the inverters, and we're purchasing these things over and over and over. And building that helps us to funnel that money or that spend into our economy. It's like an ecosystem. And it's a part of the bigger picture for Jamaica, I'm sure, because we want to be sustainable, not only in our traditional space of tourism and this, but in the creative industries, which are so severely impacted now, and it's very evident to everyone. So how can we now use this opportunity of COVID and this idea of animation and everything else in the creative industry and make it an ecosystem, so it's a start to finish, not doing external stuff, not purchasing, and really just developing it and using it. So we welcome that idea. Internally, we don't have a lot of persons who do animation here. We have a few persons who have that skill set. And it's something that we try to get abreast of who are the people in Jamaica that are available. I'm glad that we're doing this session because it creates a network for us to use and be of benefit on either side.
And I will ensure to introduce you to the Jamaica Animation Nation Network following this.
Brilliant, because the truth is sometimes when we're doing animation, we go outside. I know that you probably know that Jamaica, maybe Trinidad, and I think St. Vincent are like the 3 Caribbean islands that do have this kind of skill set in common. And one of our animators is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, funny enough, and he travels. So he was in Russia and he's in Europe and he's able to work with us. Now, I think building the library is one thing. The talent is here, we can craft that, is getting the infrastructure as well to ensure that it's like an e-commerce. It is functional and the system supports it. So I'm glad to hear that Flo is interested and can facilitate that. I'm sure Digicel can do the same, and it would be good to have all the key persons integral in the industry to stimulate that, yeah.
Kind of an activity. I wondered as well, Tashara, because big production house that you are, I'm pretty sure you have some very, very nice computers that may not be used all of the time. And another question that kind of comes out of that investigation into the render farm from Flo or from our telcos is the idea that what if you began to look at a remote kind of distributed workforce, or even a situation where you maximize on the use of your own computers by allowing people to remotely connect to your computers when they're down, so they can actually use your processing power, etc. Maybe even some of the licenses that you have to actually put out creative work. Is the lab as a publicly traded company, is the lab in the kind of a space to even consider something like that? Because what that would do is that you would bring to the table now another space for equipment, and maybe even a node for that kind of a render farm that we're thinking about, talking to Michael to afterwards. What do you think the lab's position is where that's concerned?
Yeah, I think we welcome ideas all the time. We have considered something to that effect, in where we'll create almost like a hub of creatives, and it will go into what you're going to speak about probably, which are the smart cities. And it's not just internally where people can come in and utilize the resources, but how can that be done remotely? Currently, everybody works from home.
Right.
So we are currently doing that with our internal staff. It's now engaging persons and to ensure that, the system to facilitate that is safe, it is speedy, and it is secure, I guess. But it's something that we're open to. We are looking to something called maybe a create space, where that is a physical location that persons can come in, because we do have to upgrade and change out equipment consistently, maybe every 5 years or so.
Right.
You have to subscribe. So that is there. It is just about action in it now, honestly.
Okay.
But from an internal point of view, we do operate like that. It would just be extending it to our contractors or freelancers or persons in the animation world.
Thank you so much, Tashara. I want to swing it back over to you, Claire. As we begin to get a little deep into the woods, I'd like to hear something about what is TVJ looking at. We talked about the virtualization of sets. We talked about interstitials. Is TVJ looking at motion capture and kind of live animation? Since you will be doing live events, etc., and you will be looking at that kind of a thing, have you considered animation in that kind of space, in that kind of a live event kind of a space?
I mean, We, as I said, we've done the investment to look at how we introduce animation into our broadcasting experience.
Right.
It is, for example, why for the elections we were able to do that kind of production. I mean, it making the impact about how animation makes TV sexy. I think that was the ultimate kind of experience that people got it. Interestingly, first time that we used it, but it was an opportunity for people to just see how this particular use of animation and graphic work via the technology could get you to having something that just had this wow effect, because that's what we want with it from a live production experience. So pretty much if you're able to, you know, you can get a truck to drive through the studio. You laugh, but that's kind of the kind of thing that you want to be able to do with it.
True. Very true. Right.
And so it is, I don't want to say an add-on, but it is how we will utilize this kind of technology and this kind of skill set to put that little oomph on what you TV. I mean, Shar spoke about the fact that, and again, it's important for us to understand, the whole issue of the use of animators has been happening in our industry forever. Lower thirds, montages, that's all the work of good animation. And if you're good at it, you can see it. We have invested quite a bit into that part of our product from a couple of years now, not necessarily a lot of people, but people who kind of get it. And each time we have a major event, if we're doing the Olympics or World Championships or anything like that, you really kind of throw a lot of effort into how you can utilize those skill sets to give the production that extra oomph.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's a crucial part of what we do. But to go along the other steps, as I said, we are very, very excited and interested about looking at where the players are now in terms of people who are getting into the business. There is a lot of investment going on with getting people trained. What I worry about is that you're training all of these people and then what?
Right.
Also the fact that you're training them with a notion of 50 US a second. I don't know that 50 US a second is something that happens from here.
Understood.
And if they're having a mindset that I'm worth 50 US a second, if Tashara and Michael and Claire are not paying them 50 US a second, I'm not doing animation.
Right. Right.
It's a real challenge, and it's a real way of us trying to come to terms with, and this is no different from anything else we do generally in our business. So the Super Bowl is going on, and a spot in the Super Bowl for 30 seconds is 4.5 million US dollars for a 30-second spot. That does not mean that I can charge Michael 4.5 million US dollars. So
Understood.
You kind of have to appreciate and get the industry to understand the expectations within this economy, bearing in mind that part of what we want to do is to build the skill set that creates the exportable skill, creates the exportable content, makes us attractive because we have numbers of people. I'm stepping out of animation, but it is important because it is relevant to what we're talking about. So we like to talk about TV as a location, Jamaica as a location for TV, and Jamaica as a location for film, and we have all the skills and we can do all of that. The truth be told, if 3 major movies were to decide to come to Jamaica now, to do 3 movies at the same time, we don't have the capacity to scale it. We don't.
So it's not just a matter of numbers, it's a matter of skilled numbers.
Skilled numbers. So
Right.
I'm saying capacity because we like to talk about the technical resources. We probably do have technical resources for the most part that might be able to support 3 films going on at the same time. Maybe we do, right? Maybe we do, between all of the players that are in there that have invested. We don't have the actual qualified skills to manage 3 major movies going on in Jamaica at a single time.
I want to
that to the animation industry, it's a similar kind of thing. We have to appreciate that we have to build that skill set.
Right.
That allow us to really get aggressive and participate in certain things.
Thank you so much for that. I want to kind of talk about that entire, not necessarily the skill set part, but to go back to the technology and kind of throw it over to Michael, because what I see is when I look at Flow and its regional network, I get this idea of the business of animation and this idea of syndication, the idea that I can do something in one place and I should be able to lock into this kind of a network that will send it all over the place, right? Again, please, if I get the TV terms wrong, feel free to correct me, guys. But the idea of this kind of a regional syndication of content, Michael, and this is where I believe Flow is best positioned. What would you have to talk about? What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it gets back actually to a lot of the points Claire had raised.
Right.
In that, greenfield productions, that's an animal in of itself, and all the all the concerns that Claire raised are all true. Now you multiply that by trying to do a regional network, so that is you multiply that. So then all those other concerns are multiplied. Claire raised a lot of points. People are, we are in the Caribbean, we are a small market globally, right? So when I mean, yes, there is opportunity to do things regionally. Totally agree with that. But I think that try to you created a network or even a greenfield production. There's not a whole lot of return, let's put it that way, in trying to distribute that regionally. So I think our mindset really needs to be, yes, as Claire said, we need to start what we can handle, right? But our outlook should also be globally. Right, as I said, we are a small market. English-speaking Caribbean is only 6 million people, which is not a lot of people. So when our ideas really should be, okay, how can I pitch this, globally, in other English-speaking, region, maybe in New Zealand or
right.
Right. And I think we all like talking regionally. I mean, I'm all for regionalism. I have Trinidad living in Jamaica for years, but I think that we're a small market, we're a small region, and realistically, there's not a whole lot of return in trying to create these regional networks. So our animators, creators, we yes, develop stuff with the great creative input that we have here, but in terms of distribution, we just try to broaden our perspective on how we think we can distribute and that type of thing, because at the end of the day, it's a business.
Exactly.
And everybody to cover their costs and make money. Everybody has shareholders.
I mean, I think you raise a great point as well, Michael, by pointing out that the English-speaking Caribbean is really, what number did you say it was? I think you said 6 million?
6 million, give or take. Million. I could be wrong, by the way.
Right? No. Around about that ballpark. And I can remember one of the things that when I used to work with people from South Korea, they would say they wouldn't even bother to develop a program if they could not guarantee 5.5 million eyes. And if our entire market is only 6 million, and they're saying they're not going to bother to look at that development if they can't guarantee at least 95% of that, then I mean it creates this it better contextualizes the business of it, and as you said, the idea of the return that will come back, and the risk that is involved. You wanted to say something, Claire?
Yeah, there's more to it as well, because it really sounds really nice to say that we're a Caribbean market of 6 million. That's just a figment of everybody's imagination, because yes, we are similar, but we also are very, very different.
Understood.
Michael will know that even in terms of what you're doing, and the lab will know as well, because I believe that they do work with regional clients, they will do something that is for the Jamaican market that cannot fly in Trinidad. It cannot fly in Barbados. It needs to be tweaked completely differently for those spaces, because while we are in one same region, the actual islands have very, very different interpretations and tastes of things.
Right.
Jamaica, for example, constantly, and it's a weird scenario, we will engage with an English accented soap and an English accented person and an American accent, an Australian, and even African content. But you present them with content from the region, and there is, this is Trinidad.
Understood.
And that's real. So even when you think about size of market and you have those numbers, Michael will know it does not necessarily mean that he can have a product that is like booming in Trinidad and that he's going to take it and put it on a network that is in Jamaica and it works. They might reject it. But the critical point is that, again, for people that are coming into the industry at every level, they need to understand the ecosystem and they need to appreciate the business component of it. So when you start off with a conversation that says, oh, we need a network to distribute it. Michael, you have the infrastructure and the network, can't you distribute it? He's not doing it for the goodness of his heart. He has to figure out a way as to how this, because it's going to cost him to distribute it. So when you're thinking about that, the question is going to be, how does it make sense for him?
Right.
Very easy to say, what do you mean? You just get sponsors, you just get sponsors. That's not quite how it works either. Tasha works with the lab. She has clients. And just because she has clients that have the potential to sponsor does not mean that they're going to take up their money and just give to you because you want to get animation across the region.
Right. But I'm going to have to stick up in right there, though, Ms. Grant, even though it's really, really powerful point and very, very critical, but just with a sense of where we are in the space of today's panel. And I think I'd love to come back to you a little bit later. But I do want to hear from TASHARA a little bit about, and no, I think we want to switch it back to about what possibilities for new kinds of content there are, and what possibilities for new kinds of content that you're seeing in the marketplace. And I'm thinking that because you're the advertising agency, you probably have a bit of a more direct thumb on the pulse of things. And I've heard where the idea of putting things together and expanding the genres that are available and that are produced locally, because a lot of our artists are producing just one kind of set kind of content. Do you see animated content being able to fill genre expansion gaps? Or is there any kind of animated content, probably maybe even stop motion animation or so on, that you could see a private company jumping into and helping out, and you could see a space for expansion based on the kinds of demands that you're seeing from the advertising world?
I think people say content is king, and it's true. We have a saying here at the lab, which is anything that moves is content. So I think sometimes we overthink what it is and what that can be, but there are opportunities untouched and unlocked here, as well as in the Caribbean. So, I mean, for animation and motion graphics, we spoke to the supers, and it's that development. It's templates that people can use, whether in alpha channels or whatever it is, the technical terms. It's also the lyric videos, which are probably more used now by a lot of artists who opt not to shoot a music video for whatever reason. It's the performances, it's the podcasts, and so there is like an array of things that can be channeled through animation that is relevant. On the pulse of things, what we do know is people are tuned in a lot into TV, into the visual content, TV and online. And so content that resonates on either of those platforms are great, but that doesn't mean that everything else is dead. It just means looking at the opportunities that exist far beyond the fully animated cartoon or far beyond the movie and the feature. It could be short films. It could be a lot of things. We tend to say that we're a global company, that just happens to be in Jamaica.
Right.
And in our board meetings, our directors reinforce that in our heads, because I think once we start thinking local, we're like, okay, we only have this amount of large clients. Okay, we only have, and everybody competes. So you have digital and flow, you have the banks, and if you get one, you can't get the other. It's just, how do I realize my opportunities outside of the rock? And it does not have to start huge. As Claire said, you really can start small, and there is a myriad of opportunities for animators, I would say.
Okay, great. I do want to. I'm probably being cued by my producer now about time, but there is this one grand idea with regards to how advertising agencies and the skills and the on deck skills that are at an advertising agency, how the kind of oversight that a TV company allows for, and how the kind of reach that and networking that a telco allows for comes together. And there's been a lot of talk about, Jamaica needs to create a smart city. You mentioned it earlier, the idea of this data-driven space where you'll have lots of user interfaces and a huge focus on user experience. I would love to hear from the three of you, whichever would like to go first. Not too long, probably just like a 2-minute comment with regards to, do you see animation playing a role in equipping the kinds of backbone user interface elements and technologies and how animators could work together to bring out stuff for navigation and education? Do you see all of those things filling together to probably work within this smart city concept, and maybe even how each of you could play a role in that kind of a situation?
Well, I would say undoubtedly animation will play a role in smart city development. I know it's something that government and bigger heads are looking at now, and it requires a lot of investment. For the smart city that I think people are thinking of is everything, lights everywhere, touch, they're thinking big, and it requires a lot of capital investment. I know, for example, and it's just to go a little left, EVs are coming in, which are electric vehicles, and that plays a role in smart city itself. But to go back to your point, yes. For us, for example, and you asked about what areas can be filled, I think, we have different generations that exist within our island. And it's just, yes, you have the younger persons who are probably more tech savvy and can adapt easily, but you do have those persons who are more reserved, not so fond of it, and are afraid for reasons, valid reasons. And I think in our way, in terms of commercializing, what we've been doing, for example, is doing little how-to videos. So how do you, for example, use an app? How do you, it's educating. So there are like a lot of things that will have to happen into getting this jump started or accelerated. It will be educating, it will be, and that can be through how-to videos, which are animated mostly, or motion graphics. It could be in-app videos, for example. So it'd be educating, then probably acclimatizing people, and then having the live engagement and interaction. But it's gonna be phased, and it's definitely gonna be something that has to be gradual. But we all, I think, have different roles to play in it. And I think in terms of commercial and advertising, that is one.
Okay, great. Michael, Claire, which of you would like to go first?
I mean, I would just go back to the point that I'd raised earlier, but I think in terms of the digital experience, it's not only us, it's all businesses, it's government, that want us, want everyone to become more digital, and those interfaces require animation. I mean, yes, of course, everyone can read text, but of course, animation makes all these things more compelling. So in a smart city environment where you have all these touch points for various things, the most one of the easiest ways to communicate something is definitely through animation. So I think as we start going down the roads of smart cities, digital experiences and so on. I mean that that benefits the industry, because I think and everybody knows one of the best ways to get a compelling experience in the digital world is through animation.
Thanks, Michael. Over to you to wrap it up, Claire. I think we have about 2 minutes. Claire, I don't think I think you need to unmute.
Yeah, I said certainly it's the way of the future, and it is something that because Jamaica is great on adapting, it's going to happen. I do think the point that Tashara made is important, that the nature of our society has all of these various levels of people: rural, urban, rich, poor, educated, not as educated. That makes the movement slightly different, but it's going to happen. And yes, as it is happening, you're going to get these moments when this particular skill set becomes so important. What I do think is going to be interesting, though, with everything else that we do, I expect Jamaica to put something into it that's going to be slightly different from anything else we've seen across the world, because that's how we adapt. And that's what I'm excited about, to see how we're actually going to be using animation to interface with what we have. And education is an area that I expect that's where it's going to explode first.
Great, thank you guys. Now, as we sign out, Michael, if I wanted to get in touch with somebody to talk about this, the ability to talk about render farms and that kind of a service, who do I reach out to, Michael?
I mean, I am a very good conduit, so I'll put myself out there. I'm not the expert on our networks, but I mean, I can definitely facilitate conversations with that type of project. And I said it's something like that is not impossible. As I said, the backbone is there, the capacity is there. It's just really the platform.
Great. All right. So that's Michael Luk-Tong. If you want to reach out to Flo, over to you, Tashara. If somebody wants to talk about what the lab is doing, probably get involved, maybe even bring you a proposal around that kind of a remote distributed workspace, who do they contact at the lab?
Well, they can contact us via email at info@tpljamaica.com, which is the email we all use, myself, Kamala, and HR, to kind of scout through persons who we go through it regularly, so not to fret. They can also contact myself or call us at 908-4080. Yeah.
Thanks, Tashara. And last but not least, Ms. Grant, somebody has a fantastic idea around a series of 2-minute interstitials, and they want to fill the space that's not filled by advertisements right now, but they want to talk to you about how to do that. Who do they talk to?
Shara is asking what space is that. To be honest, we right now are looking for about 3 spaces that we need filled in our creative department, the graphics department. So we're actually looking for animators now. That's
great.
But we also, in the last 3.5 years, we opened a department called the Homegrown Division. It's a homegrown department, and it is specifically about looking at what people have out there. We partner with people for projects. We do projects that are 100% ours. I mean, you can send it to me, claire.grant@televisionjamaica.com, or Judith Alberga, who is the head of the Homegrown Department. And she's judith.alberga@televisionjamaica.com.
Thank you. I'm going to kick it back over to Michael one last time, because I just realized that he didn't give us an email address. Michael, what email address should they use?
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't want to confuse people, because I have a very complicated name. It's michael.luktog@cwc.com.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, each and every one of you guys. I mean, I think that the conversation was very insightful. And I think it gave us a good look at what people on the other side, not just the creators that want boss, but the people that are on the other side that are in the business of it are looking for, what kind of opportunities that you see, and what kind of opportunities maybe lying just below the surface that's waiting on somebody to activate. So thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you again.
much for participating in this session. Remember to join us right here tomorrow at 10 a.m., where we will kickstart another set of amazing sessions, which I guarantee you will not want to miss. Thanks for watching. I'll see you then.